The coldest start to January in years is likely in the United States over the next 10 days, and we are expecting the threat for several Arctic blasts that'll bring the potential for temperatures that are as much as 40 degrees below average. In addition to that, we're also talking about the threat for some more snowfall, including perhaps a big winter storm this upcoming weekend that could bring a mix of both ice and heavy snowfall. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 10 days, and we'll begin with what's happening across the country this morning. And overall, there's a little bit of a storm right now that's happening back over in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. This has actually brought some snowfall to areas like Nebraska, also back through Iowa, and now it's tracking to the east, and it is moving towards areas like the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes region, where there will be some snowfall in the Great Lakes today, in addition to some heavy rainfall in areas like Ohio and Indiana. And then as we go into tonight into tomorrow, it will move into the northeast, bringing the threat for some light to moderate snowfall across areas like New York and New England. And then eventually, as we go into about Thursday and Friday, that is when we're expecting this system to spin back up into Canada, which is actually going to bring the threat for some significant lake effect snowfall, perhaps feet of snow, to areas near Lake Ontario and as well as back over near Lake Erie. Now, the weather pattern is going to be changing a ton over the next few days, and this is the reason why we are going to be seeing some big Arctic blasts and perhaps even some big winter storms over the next couple of weeks. The biggest reason why is because our jet stream over the last couple of weeks has been very flat and very zonal, which has led basically to warm air building for much of the United States. In addition to that, the jet stream is angling a lot of the winds and as well as a lot of the air out of areas like the Pacific Ocean. It's actually not coming out of Canada right now, which is really the reason why things are just so much warmer here across the country, and that's why we've had such a warm December. But things are going to change as we go into the new year, because notice as we go into the weekend, we are expecting our first dip in the jet stream here across areas in the northeast, with a trough that is actually set to bring a little bit of snowfall. But even then, this is not going to be the big Arctic blast. Our big Arctic blast is not going to come until we eventually see a much stronger northerly wind as we go into Wednesday of next week, which is around January 8th. Confidence again is riding pretty high right now that we are going to see a very cold stretch of weather for much of the United States, because we are literally going to be dealing with northerly winds in the upper atmosphere for more than likely several days between really January 6th and 7th all the way probably through about January 15th. And it could last longer than that. It also could be a little bit shorter than that. Again, that's still a bit of a long-term forecast, but again, right now the trend is that we are almost undoubtedly going to be seeing well below average temperatures in a large chunk of the United States, especially in areas like the Great Plains, Ohio Valley, Midwest, Northeast, and even back through the Southeast United States. With all of that said, the coldest weather to begin January in several years is likely in the United States over the next couple of weeks, and the reason why is because we are going to be dealing with several shots of cold air. All this warm air has just been building up in the United States throughout December, with a record-breaking December month when it comes to warm weather in the United States. But what's going to be happening is later this week on Friday, we are going to have our first shot of cold air across the Midwest, Northern Plains, the Ohio Valley. And this right here is your traditional Arctic blast that you would really see any winter. This is not uncommon by any means. We see this very frequently. What's going to be a little bit different though about this setup compared to the last few is that we are going to be dealing with this cold air sticking around on the East Coast more than likely for a few days, bringing well below average temperatures, especially to areas back over in the Southeast. And there could be a chance for some hazardous temperatures down there when it comes to crops, for example. And we'll talk more about that here in just a second. But what gets more interesting is as we go into the following week. So eventually by January 7th and 8th, there's a pretty high confidence right now that we are going to be dealing with a big shot of cold air. And this one is a bit more intense than a typical Arctic blast. And the reason why is because we're going to have this jet stream just angling out of the north, essentially acting as if it's a bus, bringing tons of cold air from Canada all the way into the United States. And so we are going to be dealing with this for really several days. Again, this is really going to begin over the next few days, but it's really going to be felt as we go into the second week of January. So eventually by January 10th into the 11th, we could be dealing with the coldest weather right around this time frame, with well below average temperatures are likely, and also the potential for record-breaking low temperatures being a possibility. And then beyond this, things do become a lot more uncertain as we are going well beyond 10 days from now, but there's definitely a pretty high confidence right now that there will be well below average temperatures in the United States. Now, the GFS model right now is indicating that we could have some areas 40 to 50 degrees below average sometime around January 9th. Now, note that that's about 10 days from now, so there definitely will be changes to the forecast. It's not set in stone, but I'm just giving you an idea here of the power that this Arctic blast could literally present here to the United States, a stretch here of temperatures that are literally 30 to 50 degrees below average. And even if you don't see this particular band of cold air, there will be other areas that are at least 20 to 30 degrees below average out of this particular Arctic blast. Now, on the flip side of things, this is the GFS model from yesterday presenting that same time frame I just showed you, and notice how the temperatures that are much colder than average, including 30 to 40 degree below weather, is actually further to the east at that same exact time frame. So keep in mind that there is uncertainty right now, and I'm trying to present that as clear to you as possible because I don't want you to get too caught up here in the numbers yet, because we don't exactly know where the coldest air is going to be. We do think it's going to get very cold. It's just a matter again of where it's going to get the coldest. So keep that in mind. Again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and we'll keep you posted with the latest over the next week or so with the latest details, because again, this is going to be probably a pretty impactful event here in the United States. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, because I do think that we are going to be talking about one of the coldest starts to January that we've seen since literally 2014 or even 2018. Now, let's say this exact scenario happens in the United States. What could the temperatures be sometime around January 9th, for example? This is what the low temperatures could be sometime again around January 9th. And notice how there's a big pocket here of temperatures that are sub-zero, even the freezing temperatures reaching very far down to the south, perhaps even as far south as Houston, Texas, which usually does not happen this early in the year. And notice how there could even be some 20s and maybe teens down in Florida. And this is why the Climate Prediction Center, for example, has issued already a higher risk of hazardous temperatures in the southeast, especially for crops and also the people that are still living in tents from Hurricane Helene, because the temperatures down here are likely to get at least into the 20s or 30s. If not, they could even get a little bit lower depending on the intensity of this Arctic blast. So we are going to be keeping a very close eye on the temperature trends over the next several days. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, because even if the temperatures verify within about 10 degrees of what I just showed you, we would see dangerous cold that would lead to crop damage and as well as pipe bursting cold. Now let's talk more about the threat for winter storms, including the risk for heavy snowfall, which we're going to begin with the Climate Prediction Center's forecast between January 7th to 13th. Right now, they are indicating a higher probability of seeing the risk for heavy snowfall across areas like the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, and also back through areas like the Midwest and the Great Lakes region. One area that I do think is a little questionable right now is between January 7th and 9th. They are thinking that there's a slight risk right now from North Texas back into areas like Tennessee and Arkansas for some heavy snowfall. Now, honestly, I don't really agree with this yet. I don't really have enough confidence that we are going to see snow in areas like North Texas. It's not impossible, but I think it's a low chance. But I do think areas like northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, and even back through areas like Oklahoma and even Tennessee could deal with some snowfall, maybe even some ice as we go into the January 7th to 9th time frame. Now let's dive into the future radar and give you an idea of when we could be seeing winter storms and also when we'll be dealing with snowfall. Beginning with what's happening as we go into the new year, as we go into Wednesday and Thursday of this week, there will be some lake effect snow on the backside of this trough, especially across areas like Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. And also as we go into Thursday, a little clipper system moving into the central plains that'll bring a little bit of light to moderate and maybe even at times heavy snowfall. That'll eventually move into areas like the Ohio Valley late Friday into Saturday. Eventually, as we go into Sunday into Monday, this is when things become a lot more concerning, because we are growing a lot of confidence right now that we are going to be dealing with at least some large winter storm. Where it happens is still a little uncertain, since we're still about 5 to 6 days out from this event happening. But the problem with this is that it's likely to bring heavy snowfall, and also the threat for an ice storm where it sets up is still a little uncertain. But right now, the latest GFS model run is indicating that heavy snowfall could fall as far south as central, maybe even southern Oklahoma, back into northern Arkansas, Tennessee, back through areas like Missouri and Illinois and Kentucky, where there also could be some ice out of this, including areas maybe even as far south as northern Alabama, which would be pretty shocking even in early January. And then eventually, as we go into early the following week, this would fizzle out as it approaches the Appalachian Mountains. And then beyond this, things become a lot more uncertain. The GFS model has been showing some crazy stuff like a Gulf of Mexico winter weather event across areas like the South Texas back into Louisiana. Now, I'm not saying this will never happen. I'm just saying it's a very low chance, since we're still well over 7 to 10 days out from that even happening. And then eventually sometime around January 11th and 12th, again, things are probably going to ramp up again, probably with at least 1 or 2 more winter storms with this Arctic blast happening. But we're definitely going to see, I think, this big winter storm here in just a few days, and we're going to have a full breakdown on that once we get a bit closer in terms of the specifics, in terms of where the heaviest snowfall will fall and also the ice storm threat. So again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel for the latest on that. Now, there are a couple of winter storm scenarios for Sunday into Monday across the United States. The first one is a more northerly track, which is what I'm personally leaning towards, despite the computer models not showing this right now. This would basically indicate that the heaviest of the snowfall would end up up happening back over in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. The ice storm threat would be also further to the north in areas like Missouri and even back into northern Kentucky, and then mostly rain back down in areas like the Dixie Alley. And this would also promote the threat for severe weather a bit further off to the north as well, maybe even up into Tennessee. Now, the further south scenario is our second scenario, which is what I just showed you with the GFS model, indicating snow back over in the Ohio Valley, even back down into areas like Tennessee and even into North Carolina, with the ice storm threat also being further down to the south. Now, keep in mind, there could also be some snow on the backside of this in areas like North Texas and Oklahoma, but that is obviously very uncertain. And then also the rain being much further down to the south, with any severe weather threat mostly being confined to the Gulf Coast. Also, shout out to James Pettis for making those winter storm scenario graphics. In terms of how much snow we'll see and also where that snow will fall, the GFS model is indicating that we are going to see quite a bit of snow out of this winter storm, indicating that we could see a widespread 6 to 24 inches of snow anywhere from like the Central Plains, for example, back into areas like the Ohio Valley. Now, keep in mind, we are over 5 days out, so specific details like where the heaviest snowfall falls and if you'll see snow is still a bit of an uncertainty point, but the GFS model is indicating that we could have some spots near 2 feet of snow, which would be quite the winter storm. Now, the European model, on the other hand, is a bit further to the north, but still indicates significant snowfall out of this, even including areas back over near Washington, D.C., but also indicating the threat for 1 to 2 feet of snow in several areas. Now, one thing we know for sure is that the weather will be crazy over the next couple of weeks, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified with the latest videos. There is a chance that if this winter storm is as big as it looks right now, we will be live at least once or twice around the time frame of it occurring, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel for that. It'll definitely be interesting. In addition to that, just a quick announcement, our Happy Holidays merch on shopmaxvelocity.net is going away today. At the end of the day today, this will be off the store, so make sure to go check that out at shopmaxvelocity.net. Tons of different items in this collection, really cool design, definitely recommend you checking it out. Also, we have our Flying Trampoline merch, Drunk NATO merch, and as well as our Max Velocity collection, all still available, so go check that out, shopmaxvelocity.net.